If you've ever thought that the children of celebrities only live under the spotlight and bask in the glory of their famous parents, then you need to know about Knox Jolie-Pitt, the youngest son of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, who is quietly carving out a path that's strikingly different from the whirlwind of Hollywood drama. Knox's story doesn't begin with a box office hit, a sensational red carpet appearance, or a bold declaration on social media. Instead, it begins with silence, a surprising, deliberate silence, as at the age of 17, Knox chose to study sign language rather than chase the limelight. Why would a boy born into one of the most prestigious families in the world choose to walk quietly through the glare of fame? That very question holds the key to what makes Knox's journey so compelling. Because when we explore his path, we don't just see a teenager in the shadow of two cinematic icons. We discover an individual who is slowly, intentionally defining himself, quietly, differently, and deeply. Born in Nice, France in July 2008 alongside his twin sister Vivienne, Knox was from the beginning a part of one of the most watched families on the planet. His parents, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, are not just top-tier celebrities, but also prominent voices in global humanitarian efforts. Yet while his siblings Maddox, Pax, or Shiloh have each made their mark publicly in different ways, Knox has opted for a more understated path, seemingly immune to the noise and expectations often associated with Hollywood life. He once appeared in the animated film Kung Fu Panda 3, lending his voice alongside his mother and siblings, a memorable moment, but not a launching pad for a grand acting career. From the outset, Knox appears to have had a special intuition, a protective instinct over his personal space amidst the unrelenting scrutiny of the media. What's remarkable is that Knox was never forced into any mold by his parents. Angelina Jolie once told People magazine that she is always very honest and very human with her children. In a household of 6 children, Jolie believes it's the interactions between siblings that truly shape their personalities and growth. This is especially true for Knox, who has grown up in an emotionally rich, multicultural environment, yet has managed to retain a strong individual identity. When Angelina says she is simply there to support and develop every different aspect in each child, it reveals a parenting philosophy that few celebrities successfully maintain, empowering children to be their true selves, even if that self deviates from public expectations of glamour and fame. Knox didn't follow his parents into acting. He didn't clamor for attention in promotional campaigns or reality shows. Instead, he chose something that makes people stop and reflect: learning sign language. It's not just a hobby. It's a quiet declaration of care for deep human connection, the kind that exists when words are no longer the primary medium. In an age dominated by social media, where speaking up is often measured by likes and views, Knox's decision to engage with a language of silence is a deeply human act. It offers a refreshing perspective that meaningful presence doesn't require volume, but empathy. Even his name reflects layers of personal and cultural significance. Knox is a tribute to Brad Pitt's grandfather, Hal Knox Hillhouse, a man remembered as traditional, quiet, and thoughtful. Léon, a classic French name, recalls the place of Knox's birth in southern France. These seemingly small details symbolize the cultural depth Knox carries, not just as the offspring of 2 global superstars, but as someone rooted in tradition, humanity, and discretion. Brad Pitt once shared that as a baby, Knox reminded him of himself, especially in his love of music, while Vivienne embodied Angelina's grace and poise. Yet Knox has refused to become anyone's copy. His silence is not emptiness. It is a conscious choice. In a world where noise often drowns out meaning, Knox reminds us of the importance of quiet, where the essence of who we are can finally be heard. When we look at the Jolie-Pitt children, it's easy to be captivated by Shiloh's bold individuality, or Maddox's early maturity and leadership. But it is Knox, the one mentioned least, who may be revealing a depth that few celebrity offspring ever express. His rare appearances, each leaving a subtle yet distinct impression, speak to a kind of art of living, where presence is intentional and purposeful. So, could Knox Jolie-Pitt become a figure of inspiration in the future? The answer likely depends on how we define human value. While the public often expects celebrity children to chase their parents' legacy to prove their worth, Knox is moving in the opposite direction. One where value is rooted in authenticity, connection, and the ability to listen. That's what makes every step he takes, no matter how small or silent, just as impactful as a standing ovation. Have you ever wondered what truly goes on behind the dazzling lights of Hollywood? Behind the picture-perfect images of A-list celebrity families, what is really happening inside the minds of those still growing up? Have you ever looked at children born into fame and asked yourself, are they truly happy? One story that forces us to confront this reality is that of Knox Jolie-Pitt, the youngest and least mentioned son in the high-profile family of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, once considered one of Hollywood's most iconic love stories. Yet through years of courtroom battles and prolonged disputes, they've revealed an uncomfortable truth. Even the most beautiful love can become toxic when it breaks down. And the first victims are not the adults, but the children. Children like Knox. The phrase, Knox, might be very sad too, sounds casual, even easy to dismiss as a passing emotional remark. But if we pause and place it in the context of years-long custody battles, asset disputes, and public verbal warfare between Jolie and Pitt, the statement takes on new weight. It signals a sorrow that has been accumulating, a quiet loneliness gnawing away at the childhood and teenage years of a boy who never asked to be at the center of a family tragedy, but was forced to grow up within it. Children caught in the middle of high-conflict divorces are often those who suffer the most deeply. Psychologists refer to this as invisible trauma, a form of psychological injury that victims cannot express, or may not even recognize how to express. They don't cry in front of the cameras, they don't rebel publicly, but they begin to live in a prolonged state of mistrust. They lose faith in love, in adult relationships, and worst of all, in the value of family itself. For Knox, who grew up seeing images of his parents hand in hand on magazine covers, the heartbreak of watching them attack one another in the press likely left cracks that will not easily be repaired. Even Angelina Jolie herself once admitted that she doesn't see herself as the leader of the family, but rather as someone who supports each individual child's growth. But how can even the strongest mother protect 6 children from the emotional fallout of a high-profile divorce that has dragged on for nearly a decade? Knox may have learned how to step back and hide his feelings, but that doesn't mean he is unaffected. On the contrary, his decision to study sign language as a way to connect in silence could also be interpreted as a coping mechanism. This boy might be searching for a mode of communication that does not hurt, cannot be twisted, and doesn't involve shouting. And sign language, a language without spoken words, becomes a symbol of a longing to be heard, gently, in quiet. What's thought-provoking is that while media outlets constantly update the public on who is winning or losing in court, who has custody, who owns the majority of Chateau Miraval, the psychological and emotional development of children like Knox is almost entirely overlooked. They are not plaintiffs or defendants, yet they are the consequences. And sometimes, those consequences last a lifetime. How many children in the real world, not just the offspring of celebrities, are growing up in similar situations? How many have chosen silence, not because they don't know how to speak, but because they know that even if they do, the adults won't truly listen? Knox represents those children, quiet, rarely seen, scandal-free, yet he is the clearest mirror reflecting what has gone wrong in how adults handle broken relationships. In that world, children's emotions are often considered secondary. But it is that so-called secondary issue that becomes the true legacy of high-conflict divorces. So what allows Knox to remain steady amidst turbulence far beyond his years? Perhaps it is the presence of his siblings, an emotional ecosystem that Angelina Jolie once described as deeply impactful to one another. He is not alone, and that connection may be the only lifeline keeping a child from losing his way in the storm of lawsuits and emotional damage. But let's be clear, that is not a solution. It is merely survival, and survival is not the same as healing.